Hello Internet, I'm Dan. And I'm Chaz, and this is Wine is Serious Business, episode 182. We're here with our with both a friend and a winemaker in the Willamette Valley that we really respect, Byron Dooley. He does Seven of Hearts wines and Luminous Hills together. A while back we had talked about potentially doing a show, and this is one I've been really excited about. One, because he makes a ton of wine, but really showcases a lot of really cool stuff that's going on in both the Willamette Valley and the Columbia Valley. And so yeah, here's Byron. And for our show today, we're going to be doing two shows back to back. But the first show we're going to be showcasing the Pinots and all 2011 vintage. How did you feel about the 2011 vintage for you? And for the first one, we're going to pour just the Willamette Valley. What'd you think?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Yes, and thank you.
I have to say, 2011 was my favorite vintage for Oregon Pinot Noir so far. And that said, in the context of it probably being the most difficult vintage that I've worked with so far.
Okay.
From a viticultural standpoint, it was very challenging, the coldest vintage on record. But this is where Pinot Noir can excel if you put the time into getting everything right in the vineyard. You really pay attention to what's going on, and you have some patience and a little fortitude at the end of the year. Right. So we cropped our vineyards pretty low. This particular wine is a blend of all 5 vineyards I work with for Pinot Noir in 2011. One each from the Yamhill, Carlton, Luminous Hills, Ribbon Ridge, Chale Mountains, and Dundee Hills.
Wow, that's
so a nice broad expression across all 5 of those AVAs, the distinctive characteristics of the sites, the soils, the different clones, always looking for some unique, interesting clones that match well with the sites. So here's where it all comes together, a broad expression of these vineyards. It is my entry-level Pinot Noir. I think you should mention $20 retail. Yep. But it's really just as important to us as our top-end reserve you're going to have as well. It's got the signature of all of our wines. Very traditional, old-world methods, really intended to capture a sense of place. Native yeast fermentation across the board. A lot of old cluster fermentation on select lots. Okay. This entry-level wine is probably 20% old cluster fermented from lots that were 100% old cluster fermented. Wow. And then minimal use of any additives to, we don't manipulate color or monkey around with it in terms of trying to get, fine-tune, tannins or anything like that. It's, we try and focus that on the vineyard and the lots and the fermenters through the aging process.
Cool. Yeah, really clear color here. A light colored Pinot.
Yeah, I think probably my mantra has been over time, especially when it comes to Pinot Noir, color doesn't matter.
Right, it really doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's, once you start trying to force color, a grape like Pinot Noir doesn't have any things you don't want, bitterness, astringency, you lose the sense of place, but most importantly, the Pinot Noir is all about.
I think you get a great spicy nose on this too. There's like some dark fruits lying underneath it.
Which was atypical for the vintage, even in some dark fruit
sides
and ADAs. Like the Ribbon Ridge is actually probably the largest portion of this, and so that is where you're getting a little bit more of that dark fruit. But the spiciness is that, some of the clonal selections, but definitely the whole cluster fermentation.
Just the red fruit is nice here, but there's a sense of just like a little bit of richness on the nose too. That's really nice. It doesn't come through with a lot of 2011s, only because. A lot of 2011s are a little tightly wound right on release, and this one is rather expressive on the nose. So.
Yeah, and I would agree. A lot of the 2011s are going to require some patience. I think I call it good, gooder, better, best. They're good when they're released now. We wouldn't put them out otherwise, but they're going to be gooder in a couple of months, better in a couple of years, but best in their prime 8, 10, 12, 15, 18 years, depending on the wine and what it was designed for. But this one here, this is really designed to be approachable and accessible out of the gate. And even a vintage like 11, I want that. But you should expect a little bit more tightly wound on some of the wines like the single vineyard desert. That's the one we're going to have. And then, of course, this one is not even released until this fall. But even there, I think you're going to see we've got some approachability in the start as well.
Yeah. Part of what really strikes me when I taste this is I get like some good acidity right away, like some green apple flavors that run around the sides of the palate, and then this this darker fruit with a little bit of richness really evolves in the center. And it's got some good texture to it already, where it's like these full fruit flavors that, are giving a little more excitement, a little more evolution than I expect when I pop a bottle at that price point. So that's really kind of like a little extra exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, we view this wine, even though it is our entry level, probably 90 from Pinot Noirs. That doesn't mean it's not, important to us. It's really just as important as our top end wine. More people can see that we make more of this wine. It's got a kind of carry the message of what the wines are about, and create an interest in the other wines. But I love it for itself too, because this is a wine. Sometimes people, well, which wine do you like the most? What's your favorite? Well, it depends on what I'm having to eat. What I'm doing.
Right.
And what my mood is, what the barometric
Just like music. Yeah.
Yeah, like music. Sometimes you want something really simple, sometimes you want the complex opera. This is something that if you're gonna just have a nice casual evening, out on the porch with a simpler meal. Not that it can't stand up something a little bit more complex than that, but
I believe it. Yeah.
Well, the structural elements of it are always, well, I say always, only in the sense that I've had this wine in multiple vintages, and one thing that's continued to impress me about this wine is the structure. Like a lot of lower end Pinots don't have it, or it's not integrated. This one is, and it has. It's hitting above its price point to a sense, and it's a very nice sub 20 Pinot, consecutive one of my favorites. So yeah, and this one is killing it. Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool stuff. So thanks, and widely distributed now too, right? You're in a few other states, which is kind of cool. So those of you who are watching this outside of Oregon,
yeah, a few other
might
states.
be able to see it. So.
And even overseas now.
Awesome.
We're overseas.
China.
Wow, congratulations.
What about this bottle?
All right, so this would be an example of one of our single vineyard designates, of which I do at least 5. Each of those different sub-AVAs that I mentioned earlier, each of those different vineyards. I'll sometimes do multiple ones from the Luminous Hills vineyard, which is the one we're having right now. So this one is all from the Yamhill Carlton AVA, 4 miles southwest where we're standing right now. What's unique about this vineyard I planted in the southwest corner, a little higher elevation, so it's in a transition zone. And so as a result, there's 2 distinct soil types in this very small geographic area. Sedimentary soil at the bottom, which is typical of the AVA, ancient marine soil, a little darker fruit profile generally, promoted in wines. The upper elevation, though, between 700 and 800 is Jory volcanic, and that's a little bit more unusual here, and that gives you a bit more elegant red fruit characteristics. Planted different clones matched to the different parts of the vineyard, elevation aspect and soil, and then make as many as 3 different blends from the Luminous Hills that are completely different wines, the same vintage, just tens of feet apart based on the different clonal selection of the soil. It's kind of a microcosm of Pinot Noir is about, and that ability to capture the nuance of the inputs.
That's got to be really exciting for you to see it grow year after year.
Every year it's more exciting. I mean, 08 was, kind of fortuitous through the first vintage, which is a really nice vintage overall.
Yeah, it turned out good.
But each year, there's a different character, and like I said before, I don't want to ever make the same wine. Unfortunately, if you allow the wines to really speak for themselves in terms of the not over manipulating, you get that character. So you even get it from the different parts of the vineyard.
Right.
So this particular vintage, though, 11, was a little tougher because it's a higher elevation site. As we were talking about before, really needed to crop down fairly early, get something that felt like would be sure to ripen properly. And so as a result, we got a very small yield, but it produced something special. So we actually have a nickname for this wine called Uber Silver. It's traditionally we call it silver next to our gold label Larson and the metallic purple label Astra. But it's got a lot of components that we normally get separated in different wines. Here it's in this, some is in the Willamette Valley, some is in the very special reserve as well from the Luminous Hills vineyard.
Cool.
But this wine I always think of, the silver label, is the biggest, broadest expression of vineyard. It uses the most different parts of the vineyard, all 4 clones, both soil types, in the big picture story of the vineyard. So you get that elegant red fruit from the upper elevation, the darker, spicier notes from the 115 clone, for example, and the lower elevation, and of course the round, fleshy, voluptuous quality of the Pomard clone, which is the foundation of the vineyard.
Definitely getting some nice spice on the nose here. Some peppery notes that kind of remind me of something I saw a lot in 2010 with this like black pepper. And in my brain, I'm starting to associate that more with cool vintages now. Maybe that's accurate, maybe that's ridiculous, but it's in my brain. So.
I think that's fair. I noticed that too with cooler vintages, but there's also, it highlights some of the attributes that are inherent in the site, though. For example, that 115 clone in sedentary is where a lot of the spice comes from. It tends to lean towards more fennel, anise, and a little warmer. Here's more like the peppery notes in the cooler vintages.
It's really nice dark raspberry sense.
A little bit of richness again on the nose, but like a little bit of dirtiness, almost like a raw cremini mushroom sort of thing going on in the nose, just a little bit.
Yeah,
but then like black cherries that are really, really nice. And, yeah, it smells wonderful.
It smells like Pinot Noir to me.
Yeah, yes. Delicious Pinot Noir. Right.
great feeling of the acidity on the palate. I tasted this wine a few weeks, maybe a month or two ago, and it really kind of jumped out of the glass on my palate right away, where like it's a full acidity, but it's got a really good texture to it. It's got this quality that I really enjoy, kind of somewhere between like your green apples and your limes, but it's really well put together, and the acidity has an elegance that provides a fantastic frame for the rest of the wine.
Yeah, 2011 is, I think, similar to being the Uber Silver. I like to draw a parallel with 2007 vintage, because the 2007 vintage here in Oregon was a little bit it was a lot overlooked initially.
Yeah.
Because the wines took some time.
You can still buy them at shops.
Yeah.
You can, but I think what a lot of people have noticed is that while they were really tight and wound up early, they blossomed after a certain period of time, and they became something special. The 11s, I compare very favorably in that same light because, again, a cooler vintage produced a lot of the same characteristics. I call them the Uber 07s because I think everything 07 had going for it in terms of that cool climate vintage and where patience was rewarded. This is everything plus, because in 2007 we were lucky to pick halfway through October. I mean, really, the skies were opening up. In 2011, we were picking half of our fruit in November.
Yeah, it was really late.
It's so rare to get that kind of hang time without the often accompanying elevated sugars and alcohol that will make the wines overwrought without losing your natural acidity. To get that kind of phenolic length and still have that balance of 12.5% alcohol, which is what this wine is, a pretty rare thing.
And surprising intensity and structure for such a low alcohol, really nice. And this one is a little, definitely coming from the Willamette Valley. The Willamette Valley is a little more open. This is getting more towards the tartar flavors. There's a sense of youth here that definitely will relax over time. Yeah, Dan's way into it. But just like Dan was stating, the acidity here is fantastic. And reminding me almost like a little bit of the ruby red grapefruit that you sometimes get in good Pinots. It's got just a touch of that in the center of the mouth, but there's still nice richness and nice dark fruit on the sides. And the tannin structure, like the chalkiness to it, is wonderful.
And the fruit is just delicious. Yeah.
Is this coming in at the same price point as previous years, around $27, $28 a bottle?
Actually, no. What happened with this vintage is that we weren't able to make the other blends that we normally make. So part of the Uber of the silver here is that we did have to increase the price a little bit.
Okay.
However, I don't view it as a price increase, and I think it warrants it. But the 2012s are, we're going to be able to make both the silver and the Lux again based on what we have in barrel right now. It was a lower yield year relative to the norm because of the necrosis that was generally around the valley, which was not entirely a bad thing, but it lowered yields and opened the clusters out with a lot of interesting things. But it's still enough that I can make the two wines. So my plan is to actually bring this back down a little bit, and then because we really want the prices to reflect our costs. That's basically our philosophy all along.
I know that we've reviewed the 2010 on the show, the Silver Lake.
Yes, you did.
And always another one I talked about the Willamette Valley being awesome under $20. Like this is another one in the mid to high 20s, where it's like you're getting a really good value for your money.
And this is one of my favorite 2011 so far, like for sure. Yeah, this is.
Thank you.
Yeah, delicious and interesting. It's kind of cool showing off what you can do with the range of soils on your estate, right?
Cheers to 2011.
Yeah, you've done really well with it.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
And
there's more.
Yeah. Wine number 3. I guess we'll let you talk. I got one more question for you, but you talk about the wine first.
So yeah, for this little flight here, we picked out 3 of the 9 Pinots and went from we had the broad expression of the 5 vineyards, the larger volume, the approachable wine, to one of the narrower, more focused wines from a single vineyard, to what I consider both the broadest and deepest of the wines, the very special reserve. So
I know you got a special reserve. What makes the very special reserve?
Okay, I guess we're not going to taste this, but I might as well just show
go ahead.
So most years I make a special reserve, and it's about making that most complete, complex, layered, textured Pinot Noir I can. Both about the breadth that I can get, that I can never make from a single vineyard, because you've got pieces that are available in unique components from different vineyards. So you can always make a more complete wine, usually from a blend drawing from different vineyards. So I'll make that, will be my special year. In 2011, as I mentioned, I felt like this was such a profound vintage in terms of the material that was available that I really had enough to work with to make 2 reserves. So we have our regular old plain everyday special reserve, and then we have our very special reserve for very special vintages, which we'll be making very special vintages. And so what this is, it's a very small production wine. It's very select lots. I basically selected the equivalent to 5.5 barrels, 3 particular barrels, and then 5 half barrels, which I blend together after a series of trials and put the blend together and put 4 barrels away, which became this wine. And it was really drawing fun. It's about making that most complete, complex layer texture wine. The other barrel and a half became the foundation for this wine, upon which other lots were drawn to make it completely different, and I think, also very compelling reserve wine.
Okay.
But what stands out for this wine, for me, is it draws upon all the components I want to see in wine, not just the fruit and the minerality that the vintage highlighted, but the textural components. So I think, if anything, I had to highlight the feature of this wine is that. Hopefully you can see that here even in its youth, although for the fullness of time, this should be a very age-worthy wine. Express itself here in its youth. This wine is not being released until this fall, so it's kind of a sneak preview for you to show here.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any excuse I have to open it.
It's got to be a pretty good feeling when you absolutely nail one, right? Where you're just like, which I think is what probably this is to you.
Yeah, well, it was really obvious in barrel, just going through barrels week after week over the months. It's like, especially when, honestly, even as good as I felt when we finally pulled the fruit in, it was like, it's such a tough year. You just kind of felt like, oh wow, we survived it. But as things were developing in barrel, it was clear this is something really special here. And I thought,
awesome.
this barrel, I started just imagining pieces of barrels as I'm walking through and going through and tasting them on a regular basis. So this wine was not a function of sitting down at the table one day, but a series of meetings with the barrels over many months. And so, yeah, it really came about to be something that I hoped for.
The nose here is like more perfumed fruit, like it's got a little bit of the potpourri dish going on, but just a nice bouquet of red and dark fruit.
Yeah, I think the darker cherries are really coming out. And there's a real sense of fullness even on the nose, where it's there's just a lot going on.
One of the things to note about this is you're not getting an overwhelming sense of oak or anything. This is, I think I mentioned before, the oak regimen is pretty restrained. In terms of new oak, it's generally between 20 and 30% on all my Pinots, whether it's the entry-level wine or the top. This is actually only 22% new oak on this wine.
Okay.
So again, I don't select barrels based on that, but it's the whole of the pieces and how they fit together.
Right. But just like the Lamp Valley, just a nice sense of underlying richness behind the fruit too. That's really nice on the palate or on the nose, and yeah, just makes it smell that much nicer.
And again, it's really nice, bright fruit. I think more like strawberries, with similar acidity to that, starting in on the palate right away. Man, this is a fun transition across the palate.
The textural thing you're talking about.
Yeah, you really get some nice evolution here, and it stays fresh and light the whole time, while dark flavors and richness evolve. So you get a little bit of both at the same time, which is really fun. I really like it when you can see that contrast, on the same sip.
And almost carrying complexities that were nice in both of the previous wines. There's some really nice, easy to understand red fruit, a little bit of richness, but then like some tart fruit that provides just a little bit of edge before like they're powerful tannins, like but they're fine grained and they don't overwhelm the palate, and definitely close up on the finish. But the finish is still very long. Like there's a lot of red fruit that's still left over on the palate, and yeah, this is one that I think would benefit from some cellar time. Yeah. But already there's like Dan was saying, the evolution on the palate is really quite amazing here. So yeah, it's
great complexity, and I agree. Like definitely some aging potential too.
Yes.
Because while the tannins are there, they already have good texture to them. So it's definitely not one of those like, don't touch it for 5 years.
It's gritty. Don't
Well,
do it.
we'll at least age it for 6 months until we release it, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, something to look forward to. This is substantial and one of the better 2011s I've had so far. Because really, just the evolution and the complexity of the evolution is awesome, superb. So,
Thank you.
And so the extra question I had, so you're working with all 5 AVAs, which there aren't a whole lot of producers in the Willamette Valley that get to do that. I had a question about like in these cooler vintages and in comparison to warmer vintages. So you made wine in 2009 as well, pretty opposite of 2011.
Right.
Do you think that the AVA terroir characteristics show themselves more in warm years or cool years, or if that's irrelevant to the?
I think it's fair to say that in a cool vintage, the differences become more pronounced. But I don't think they're lost in the warmer vintages either.
Sure.
2009 is a good example because even though it was a warm vintage, it had those heat spikes. We had some issues with certain northern AVAs tending to dry up. The fruit drying out a little bit early. We call it shrinkling. You still saw profound differences between the different vineyards. I mean, that was a case where you had some southern AVAs that actually tended to you could hang longer without a lot of those issues relative to the north. But the soils always seem to come through in every vintage. But yeah, in these cooler vintages, when you can get that hang time, that's amplified, no question.
A lot of range. So 3 fantastic wines that deliver very well at their price points. And
what's this one going to release at when you? What's the price? Yeah.
That is definitely the most expensive Pinot we've done because we really dug into a lot of special barrels. So that is $75 on our release price.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think commands it, honestly.
Yeah, and it's not something we'll make every year. Although I do have to confess, 2012 we might see another one. But it's only going to be done in very special vintages. We probably, if we had the material and the volume, I would have been able to do one in 2008, which would have been a natural vintage. The only other one I could conceive of in the years I've been in here, but we've got 2 back-to-back, amazing and completely different vintages to shine on something like this.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing these. These are fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Yeah,
My
awesome.
pleasure.
And to wrap the show up, I guess you get to ask a question of the viewers. Is there anything you'd like to see comments on?
Well, I guess I'm really very interested in how people are perceiving the 2011 vintage early stage because it is, it's my favorite vintage, honestly. And I appreciate the fact that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to view it that way, but I think they've been out now long enough, and you'll see them evolve over the time. Perhaps you see the show. But really interesting how people respond to the 11 vintage because I think it's special, and you're going to see a lot of. The way I look at it is that the capacity for this vintage, although every vintage has its challenges and not every wine is going to be great, you're going to see a ceiling that's really high in this vintage. So there's going to be some special bottles out there at all price points, and so I'm wanting to know whether people are experiencing that the same way.
You're definitely the most excited of anybody I've talked to. I've had people who have been confident, yeah, we got good wine, I'm looking forward to it. You're definitely the first that's I love it.
Yeah,
can't wait.
No question.
Your statement about the Uber 07s was one thing that actually piqued my interest big time on the vintage because I do see some parallels in the wines right on release. I think the 2011 wines are better on release, but as they age, exactly. As they age, you see a toughness and you see a firmness about them in their youth that sort of reminded me of 07s where we were barely drinkable. And as they start to age, you get 3-4 years of bottle age on the 07s are just beautiful at this point. What's 11 going to be like? Exactly, a bulb went off when I talked to you the last time I was here.
So you're allowed to answer that question 2 years from now or 3 years from now too.
Well, hopefully we'll be doing another show 2 to 3 years from now. So.
Yeah, we can revisit one of these in a couple of years. That'd be a good time.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week to talk with Byron some more. But thanks for watching this week. We'll see you then.
See you guys next time.
Thank you.